longevity of black males is less than that of white males, white females, and black females. The question is, why? We're going to discuss that and more when we return, right after this.
This edition of Like It Is brought to you by AT&T. It's all within your reach. AT&T.
Javier Alcena is a physician, an internist, and author, associate clinical professor of medicine at Albert Einstein Medical College. Welcome to Like It Is.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
Dr. Daniel E. Williams, PhD, is a psychologist who is the associate professor of psychology at Montclair State University. Welcome to Like It Is. I guess we ought to start with what is the root cause of the statistical shortness of life of the African male, the African American male. What, in your view, is a root of that? Let's start with you, Dr. Alcena.
Well, being an internist who practices medicine 7 days a week, the root cause basically is the lack of proper health care that black men is receiving, namely to identify the major diseases that are really killing black men at such an early age. For instance, hypertension is very poorly treated, and if it is discovered, the vast majority of physicians even now are treating it poorly, because the treatment of hypertension in black people in general is quite different than it is in Caucasian. So if one doesn't understand that, then you're going to provide an inappropriate medication, which can have a lot of side effects, a lot of expense for one thing.
What's the difference?
The difference is that black people have what's called salt-sensitive hypertension. That is another way of saying it, we have high volume, V-O-L-U-M-E. That is that when we take in salt, the kidney plays game with the salt that we take, and the salt will retain in the body and expand the fluid within the intravascular system, causing the pressure to go up. And we, by nature, by genetics, have what's called low renin. So we have low renin. White folks have what's called low volume hypertension because they have high renin. The vast majority of the medication that are being prescribed are prescribed if as though we were white, because not understanding that we don't have high renin, so therefore why give us medication that work via the renin-angiotensin system to lower the blood pressure?
Well, the obvious question is, why isn't this taught in med school?
It is being taught now. In fact, there is an organization, in fact, of the many diseases in this country, hypertension is the one that is supervised by a committee. That committee issued a report in 1993. There's another report coming in 1998 to, again, make the point that for a Caucasian person who has just essential hypertension, you give them a beta blocker.
Has this been recent, or has this been taught for a long time?
That's been taught for a long time, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure being put by the drug companies to push the more expensive medications as opposed to the water pill. The water pill is the first medication a black person should receive, in particular the long-acting water pill, in order to bleach the salt out of the system.
So the pharmaceutical companies are pressuring the physician not to prescribe the water pill.
That's exactly correct. And they do it in many ways. Not only that they come to the office and give you tons of the other medication, they also every now and then put out a scare that if you take water pill, your cholesterol will go up. If you take water pill, your blood sugar will go up. What they fail to tell you is that if your potassium is normal, and the doctor takes you the potassium via a mechanism I won't get into right now, your blood sugar will not go up.
Okay. Well, now, Dr. Williams, is it possible that there are psychological or emotional roots to some of the problems that Dr. Alcena has been talking about?
You know, I think that there certainly are. Racism is a major contributor, and it produces stress, a great deal of anger and frustration, and the effects of racism on young blacks and older blacks. I would probably begin during the teenage years on. I wouldn't have a cutoff age. It's devastating, devastating.
How do you see it manifest, really? And how are you able to calibrate the degree of the impact? How do you know that?
It's very difficult to calibrate it. In psychotherapy, people talk about issues. One of the things that we have in common as black people is dealing with racism. and those who are less educated generally tend to feel the impact of it more. But it's simply devastating, and it's very difficult to work with. Very difficult to work with in therapy.
So are we saying then that someone who has emotional disturb because of racism, it can manifest itself in hypertension?
Oh, absolutely. And let me give you the example. The example are well known. For instance, let's take a heart attack, for instance. Normally, when we go to sleep, at 2 o'clock in the morning, our adrenaline level goes up in order to prepare us for the day's work, okay? And if we're having a disturbing night because we're under stress of different type, of course, racism being one of them, the level of adrenaline goes up even higher. Now, that normal level of adrenaline on the normal condition is enough to cause us to have the most heart attack occurs in the early hours of the morning. The most heart attack occurs on Monday because of stress. This is normal stress now. Just the fact that you have to go to work. That's the way the body operates. You can imagine the amount of stress and anger a black person has to face when he or she is being harassed. Throughout the day, the level of adrenaline goes up. The pressure stays up, even though the person may be on medication. If the person is diabetic, the blood sugar will go out of control because of stress. Why? Because adrenaline is an anti-insulin hormone. It works counter to insulin. So the blood sugar will go up. If the person is angered, in fact, the study just came out not too long ago, that black men who are in the Eastern Seaboard, or Caribbean black men, have less height in their blood pressure when they face a racist situation as opposed to black men in the South. This is just published in the literature recently, because the black men and women in the South is less able to express their anger. They're less able to let it out. Over here in the Eastern Seaboard, we're able to express ourselves more, therefore the pressure goes up, but not as much. So these are all out there, no question about it. There are multitudes of diseases that are direct. For instance, stroke. You could precipitate a stroke as a result of anger if the person is already hypertensive or have atherosclerotic disease. And racism is the most anger-provoking incident that any human person can face when you are facing that somebody is doing something to you that is so unfair and so unjust, and then it just tear you apart. You have to be a black person or another minority person who have experienced racism to fully appreciate what I'm talking about.
Dr. Williams, is it possible that the response to racism might be other than medical, other than a physical manifestation?
In addition to physical manifestations, psychological. I mean, it's just totally debilitating. Sometimes it results in group violence. People can't. It destroys marriages. People can't. Just simply cannot relate. It's just so difficult to function. Young men not having skills that will allow them to get jobs, and it's very difficult to work with them in therapy. First all you have to do is teach people what's impacting on them. And once you do that, is explore with them what they can do about it, if anything.
All right. On that note, we need to take a break, but I want to take you up when we come back on that very point. We'll be right back. Promised I want to take you up where we left off. Dr. Williams, how is this manifest? You said in intergroup relationships and in marriages.
Marriages.
It can be disastrous. In what specific? Give me a for instance.
If you have to spend your workday dealing with a lot of racism, every place you go, every turn you make, it's not unusual then to go home and to be absolutely intolerant of anything that rubs you the wrong way, simply because you have to deal with it all day and you can't do anything about it, and you're not going to tolerate it at home.
The Jim Crow signs have been taken down some time ago. What do you mean when you say dealing with racism in the workplace?
Well, it's my view that racism is pervasive. It's in every institution. Jim Crow signs may be gone. Essentially what we've done is that we've in this country, we've desegregated. We have not integrated. We do not have integration. And the racism that young black males deal with many times is subtle. Most of the time it's overt. The tragedy is that it begins with our children when they're teenagers.
Is Is it unfair to just segregate this discussion, if you'll pardon the expression, to the black male? Might not females feel the same pressure?
They feel the same pressure. I think the difference between the two is one of degree. I think by far the greater threat to the society is a black male.
What is that rooted in your perception?
I think in part it has to do with the feeling of inadequacy on the part of people who are thoroughly racist. Because my view is, if you're confident in yourself and your own ability as a person, then you're not going to engage in that kind of behavior. I think it is part of it is sexual in origin, feelings of insecurity. I think that many white males have bought this myth about the sexual prowess of black males. It's very, very complicated, and it's so difficult to work with in therapy, and to wade through it, to get young black males to, first of all, to recognize what's happening to them, and second, to help them to explore what they can do about it, if anything.
Well, you brought on the table, you gentlemen have brought two important categories. One is the medical and the other is the psychological. What is a young person to do?
Well, for the medical stuff,
Where are tools available? I guess that's the question.
well, the tools oftentimes are not there, because the root cause of racism is economic. When people are economically deprived, they are not able to get the proper education. They're not able to get the proper knowledge as to what to do with themselves in terms of health. They often present to the physician too late with the cancer that's already metastasized, with the blood pressure that's already out of control causing mini stroke. There are 4 million Alzheimer cases in this country thereabout. There are many more millions who have senile young black men and women secondary to untreated hypertension, causing what's called multi-infarct syndrome. Multi-infarct syndrome is many times more common than Alzheimer's disease, because when your blood pressure is not treated, you're having little mini infarct occurring throughout the brain. After a while, you may not be paralyzed, but you can't think, you can't concentrate because of hypertension. Racism and its stress causes the increase in cancer. Why? Because stress decreases the immune system. The more decreased the immune system is, the more cancer you can develop. You could see, even a common cold. You get more common cold, the more stressed out you are. You get more mouth sore, which is ask them for help.
Your white colleagues.
Your white colleagues. And your white colleagues then, they like that because their ego get pumped up.
Do you concur, Dr. Williams?
I think that this is a very complex issue, and I don't want to give you a simplistic answer, but I think that one of the things that happened when they desegregated institutions in this country, and we got in the front door, lo and behold, people who ran those institutions discovered that, this guy's damn good. These people are good. We're better than they thought we were. So you have to keep them down. I don't believe that I don't agree with that we have to be. I do think it's easier to survive if you're incompetent, but I think we ought to be about the business of becoming extremely competent.
I agree with that.
Knowledge is power.
Well, how do you gentlemen deal with your anger? I don't have to speak because I'm doing the interview, but I want to know, since you're the interviewees, how do you deal with your anger?
I deal with my anger by turning it into positivity. When they came after me, and I say I will not discuss it, the time at which they came after me, the 5 years that I was under the most pressure, I wrote 5 books. One of them you have here. Because I had so much time. I had to be home all night. I couldn't be anywhere else because I had to be so disciplined. If I make one little sneeze, in other words, I had to choreograph my sneezing, and I'm not exaggerating. If I didn't choreograph my sneezing, I'm out of here.
And did that make it easier for you?
Well, it didn't make it easy for me. It's just that what it does for me is that everybody who knows me professionally, and you don't, will tell you that I'm just about probably one of, probably among the first 10% of people who practice medicine in this state. That's a big threat to some people. Because, and I happen to be Haitian, so they call me, how did this damn Haitian get to be so? Well, I came from Einstein. Einstein discovered me. The people at the National College of Medicine is proud of me and I'm proud of them. And but the people in the community where I am, I'll give you an example. I practiced medicine in White Plains. There were 9 minority physicians when I got there. Guess what happened? None of them there now. And I know each and every one of these stories as to why they're not there. I won't tell you, but that answers your question. The only three of us left.
How do you deal with your anger, Dr. Williams?
You know, I tell you, I am, and people who know me, I am a very angry man. I have some insight into it. I think what you have to learn to do is to channel. I think you can channel the energy associated with anger into excellence. I think that whatever you're doing professionally, you ought to be among the best at it. And knowledge is power. And once you get knowledge, first of all, everybody knows it. You see, and you become untouchable in some circles.
Where did you get this insight from as a younger person?
Well, you know, I came up during the 50s and went to college during the 50s, and I don't think that we were as black then as we are now. So one of the things that helped me was exposure to a lot of young, radical people on the campus. And young people caused me to examine what I was doing. So what I learned to do is, first of all, I got in touch with the anger. And by the way, I don't think anger ever dissipates. I think you must learn how to channel it. It just doesn't go away. And if you don't channel it, it will destroy you. You see, but again, you can channel the energy associated with anger into excellence. Another thing that I do is I opt out of, I don't participate totally in situations where I work where I'm not in control. And it's amazing how free you can become once you're not bucking for a promotion.
Now, you are men of substance who have achieved academically and in your craft. What would you say to some young man in our communities who may not have any of the things at hand that you do? How would you suggest that they begin to grapple with their anger?
First of all, you have to help them get in touch with it. You know, then you have to help them believe that no matter what has happened in the past, that there's still a lot that they can do. You got to get
By what means would you, excuse my bad manners, but by what means would you help them realize this?
Well, counseling, mentoring doesn't necessarily have to be psychotherapy as we know it, but counseling, mentoring, in a therapeutic situation, helping people get in touch with their anger, helping them believe in themselves. I can tell you.
Doctor, in some communities, you know, that's a laugh. Mentoring is not available, and not readily.
Then
Counseling?
Yeah, then there's also a lot of room for self-help. I mean, we have to get to the point where we stop relying on people who are not like us to do our job. I mean, Malcolm said it years ago, just to paraphrase it, that if you entrust your most prized possession, meaning your children, to people who are not like you to be educated, that's genocidal.
I believe education, in my view, is the key.
I believe we need to take another break, and then I'll get into your beliefs right after this, please. You were saying about your belief.
Yeah, I believe education is the key, because if once you are educated, as Dr. Williams said, you have power.
So you're not talking about academic education.
Well, there are many different types of education. Academic education is very important in this society and most society. I believe that young black men and women have to have enough of self-esteem to not allow themselves to be destroyed by drug and alcohol, and to stay away from the mischiefs of these things, and then go to school. If you are not as good with school as you're supposed to be, you go and try to get tutoring. I know in some communities it's not available. If you can't do the work in 3 hours, you do it in 6 hours. You don't get discouraged, because there are a lot of barriers have been raised precisely to prevent you from... See, once you are educated, truly educated, you're in a position to think things through yourself, so that you can go sit in your room, in your corner. You can intellectualize things logically, so that you come up with answers that's going to be to help you in different situations, so that you don't do under these crazy things. And I agree with him 100%. Excellence at whatever you do, you have got to make every effort to be the best at what you do. It used to be in the 60s when I was coming up, that if you're 10 times better than the white person who does what you do, you could get okay. Believe me, that's not going to cut it anymore. Now, that is a lot to ask of a person, but if you want to make it, if you want to be at the same level as the white person, to be able to get a good job, to be able to have a good place to live, to be able to have a good life, you have got to understand racism It's not going to go away in my lifetime. And yet you got to live through it. The only way you can overcome what you have to overcome is not by the quick job, the beautiful car, the beautiful suit. No, it's through the slow process of educating yourself. Go through the system and then go through it so that you can, when you make it, that doesn't mean to say they're not going to try to get rid of it, but that's a different issue. That's not what I'm talking
What
about.
about collectivism? What about us doing things as a people, organizing to do something, as Dr. Williams suggests?
That would be ideal. That would be ideal. We started some of that. We started some of that in the 60s. But then quickly, the minute they saw that black people were getting ready to organize themselves into a bloc that might have some force to it, they began to dismantle it using their pernicious means, their vicious ways of penetrating into the group and separate them. You would separate them so that you could conquer. That happened in the 60s. I mean, how do you think I get where I am? I mean, I went through school in the 60s. I knew about the Great Society concept. I started college going to school at night and working 2 jobs. But the minute they saw that you are going to form something in a coalition that is going to be positive, they're going to try to find ways to destroy it, because the idea is that you have to cause disunity. If you unite, then you might achieve something. If you are disunite, then you can't achieve anything. So right now we are in a situation, there's nothing happening positive in the real sense of the black community. It's every man and every woman for himself. We are trying to survive. We are just like that, going like a boat without sail.
Why has the medical community among African Americans spoken up?
No.
And organized?
No.
If we're talking about organizing, why hasn't it happened among your colleagues?
But I'll tell you why.
I want to ask you
first, and then I'll tell you my part of it. Yeah.
I can tell you part of the problem, and that is that many times when you're educated by people who are not like you, you become just like the people who teach you. And therein lies a major part of the problem. So we can't get together. For example, education is very complex, and we certainly have to learn what's being taught in most educational institutions in order to be able to navigate the system. But there's also, as you mentioned, there's also a need for the collective to do things outside of public school, outside of private schools, to do things in our churches, to teach our children those things that they are not being taught in public school about themselves. See, they took God out of the schools in this country. We were never there. You see, so we have to do this ourselves outside of the public school.
What has this disease, what impact has it had on our relationships with the opposite sex?
A great deal, because Dr. Williams alluded to it before. When you are under extreme stress, you're being demeaned every step of the way during the course of the day. You are basically, you are in slavery again. And I don't mean to demean slavery, because our four parents went through it. When you get home, you're huffing and puffing, and you are on edge. The least little thing that drop, you jump. Okay? The next thing you know, you're not doing the right thing by your children. Next thing you know, you're not doing the right thing by your wife, and your relationship with your girlfriend is gone, or you may not have anything at all. And there's a whole other issues that's involved. What's happening right now in the modern part, as we have it right now, a lot of young, available, educated, black female, professional, are not going near a black man, because they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the fact that the guy he's got this problem. When he comes home, he's got to talk about it. When they go out, that's all he talks about, because the guy is preoccupied with what he's going through during the day. Plus, he doesn't have the money with which to take her to the place she wants to go. He can't afford this, he can't afford that.
Well, why wouldn't a woman want to talk about these things?
Because she doesn't have time for that. She doesn't have, her time is that she goes to, I'm not a woman. I'm a man. I happen to be writing a book about black women, so I did a lot of research on the issue. She goes to work. She wants to go to work on Monday morning and tell her co-worker on the bench or the desk where she sits what she did yesterday. What did you do over the weekend?
Oh, you're going to get a spanking by some people who are going to
But
write
that happens to be the truth, and I'm writing these things. I researched
Well,
them.
you know what I'm going to have to do? We're going to have to make this into a series.
Okay.
Because we're going to have some people in to talk about it from the other side of the
Absolutely.
gender fence to find
And I'm a
out.
pro-woman man. Believe me, I'm a pro-woman man, and I'm telling you, those happens to be the fact. A lot of young, available black women today, professional and otherwise, are dating white men.
Do you concur, Dr. Williams?
I mean, I concur. I think that interpersonal relationships, love relationships, certainly suffers from the stresses that we're talking about. It's very difficult for a lot of couples to survive because of this stress. You know, we live in a society where the general attitude is that masculinity in part is measured by one's income. If that guides your behavior, then you're in trouble if you're black.
Do we nourish this ourselves, this whole, or is it self-perpetuating, this materialism?
Oh, you know, I think we do. Young black college graduate wants to get out of school and he's just like his counterpart. He wants a BMW or a Lexus, you know, and it's very materialistic.
Well, I guess the question still hangs, what we're going to do about it. We've got one more segment to tackle it. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us, please.
Oh, I think so. I think it was a tremendous event. I have an associate who describes it as a religious experience. All of those men coming together with no animosity, you know, just talking to each other, relating as brothers. I think it was a response to the things that we're talking about. And I hope that fervor doesn't die, because I see the solution. I don't think any one profession or group has a solution. We have to bring in the collective. We have to organize as that march was organized.
What was your emotional response to the Million Man March?
It was a positive response. It was for the first time that many men got together and to express themselves.
What was your interpretation of what they were saying collectively?
Basically, some of the things that we've just been talking about, the fact that they are human beings of quality, of value, that there are things positive they can do, that they did not want to constantly be identified in a negative way, that every time something negative happened to a black person, that every black man suffered the minute it shows up on television, that they can be family men, they are family men, they take care of the children, and that they basically, people try to give it other connotation, but that's basically what they were expressing.
Well, there was a strong thread about atonement, to atone for shortcomings and misbehavior on their part. But having said that, what should come out of things of an expression of this magnitude, and where can we go from here? It's a large number of black men that turned out. What can be done, or what could be done with such an event, or is it too late?
It's not too late. I think it has to be translated, brought down to the local level, and the same kind of organization in our communities take place, and that we take part in controlling and influencing how all of the institutions work in our community, schools, police, banks, all of them. But the same skill and talent that went into organizing that on a national level, we need on a local level.
How does it start? What starts the ball rolling? That's where I'm really
Leadership. Unfortunately, in the black community these days, we don't really have a single leader like a Dr. King that we could rally around.
Why is that?
Does
that say something?
It's not by accident. It's not by accident. Nothing happened, nothing to this magnitude happened by accident. The fact that black people in this country is leaderless, this is part of the whole overall picture. You can't have a leader. The minute you are going to have somebody that's going to lead, they're going to make sure that that person is in trouble in some fashion. That's part of the overall picture. That you cannot, I mean, and I'm being cynical, because you need some degree of, but it's not being cynical, it's being truthful. We are people of immense intelligence. Take a look at our history. We are people of immense abilities, mentally, intellectually, and I mean, after all, the human race began in Africa. Now, this is undeniable. An African woman gave birth to the human race. So we have tremendous ability to do the thing. So it is the force that is no longer part of Africa that is preventing us from getting together to do positive things. I live in Harlem in the early 60s, okay? And I saw what was happening there. The drug wasn't made in Harlem, they were brought there. And they're being brought there. So all these external forces are interplaying to keep us down, okay? And the sooner people realize that, see, here's my thing. you have got to learn how to suffer for the better good. If the minute the man offers you a car or a condominium or a few $1,000s to do in your fellow black man or woman, you grab it, we're never going to get anywhere. I mean, Bookman and Haley didn't do that. And the people who follow Bookman, when they bled the first drop of blood in the case of women, black people freedom, they stick together. They accepted death rather than revealing themselves.
I'm in quest of an ignition switch.
Indeed. If it is to begin, it must begin in an institution that's under our control. And the best institution in which to do this would be the black church. That's what the civil rights movement said.
What do you see happening in the black church today?
Nothing on a grand scale, but that's the place where it should begin. Logically, because they're independent, reasonably so, from the system in terms of economics.
This has been a very, very difficult discussion, very painful for me, and I guess my question is, are you pessimistic about our chances, or are you optimistic? Is there any daylight?
Let me say this: I'm not pessimistic. I often describe myself as a disillusioned optimist. I think that where there's life, there's hope. I think that if we can reach black people who run some of the institutions that we control, that we could begin this. But it has to be in an institution that's under our control, and I think the black church is the ideal place to do it.
How do you see it?
Well, knowing what I know, seeing what I'm seeing, how pernicious and deeply rooted racism really is, and how pervasive the dollar sign, the dollar bill really is in terms of getting people not to stick together, that we got a long way to go. I wish I had one single answer I can give you. And on the individual basis, I think people should work hard, go to school, be disciplined, love one another, love all people. We are all human beings, and then we're going to survive. In terms of a global plan, which is what you're looking for, the global plan will be...
I'll take it on any level. Global, national, local, it doesn't matter.
I think
we have more professionals than
okay, but then why don't we take the $300 billion plus that we're spending and start doing something with it and creating our own businesses, our own school, our own hospitals, our own professional schools, etc., etc.
I understand the thesis, but I don't understand, and I haven't yet heard what can get it started.
What can get it started? Like you said, the church is a good place. If you can get the church people, like Dr. King was a church person, if you could come up with a leader and the statue of Dr. King, which I doubt will ever happen, but one should never say never, then you could get somebody to rally around where all these different parts will put together so that we can then get somewhere.
How would you answer someone who would say, you two gentlemen are ducking? You're passing it off on the church when you should really be stepping up yourselves.
Oh, some of us have stepped up. I mean, I've stepped up in my own way. I mean, I'm practicing in White Plain. I'm proud to tell you, in case you didn't know, in my own field.
I don't mean it.
I've done individual things, but to say, I mean, I'm not a docker. I don't dock anything, but I'm a realist. I'm a realist. There's very little thing I myself can do to solve our problem.
We're out of time.
Well, I think, most of us try to do our things if we're sensitive to the problem. But again, there's no individual solution to a group problem. The solution has to come from the group, from within the group.
Well, then obviously this discussion must go on, and it will continue. We will be doing more on this subject. We thank you for bearing with us, and we hope we've provided food for thought. We'll see you. Thank you.
This edition of Like It Is was brought to you by